The sound of her footsteps echoed softly through the expansive corridor, a rhythmic cadence against the silence. Flickering lanterns cast warm glows along the walls, their light dancing over the ornate carvings and tapestries depicting the triumphs of past emperors. Meixiu's gaze remained forward, her posture regal, though her thoughts were anything but composed. A stray lock of her raven black hair brushed against her cheek as she turned her head slightly, the small mole on the edge of her right ear catching the light. It was a mark so subtle that few noticed it, but it had always reminded her of her mother, who used to kiss it softly when Meixiu was a child, calling it her little star of wisdom. Meixiu sighed inwardly, allowing her mind to wander as she walked. Meixiu, she thought, a name that once belonged to a carefree girl who laughed without restraint in the gardens of the Qianlong Kingdom. Now, it belongs to a pawn in my father's elaborate games. Her steps slowed as she glanced briefly at the floor, her lips pressing into a thin line. Qianlong, the kingdom ruled by Emperor Zhao Ren, a man whose paranoia rivals the mountains for immovability. She could still hear his voice in her mind, commanding, calculating, and distant even when cloaked in fatherly concern. He does not trust anyone, not even himself. He has always been wary of alliances and intentions. To him, everyone is a potential betrayer, a possible usurper. Her gaze sharpened as she continued walking, the memory of his stern reprimand fresh in her mind. I have seen him use the same tactic countless times, pretending to show favor, only to place someone directly in the line of fire. And yet, I still find myself entangled in his schemes. Her lips curled into a faint smile, though her eyes remained cold. But not everyone is within his grasp. Her heart lightened slightly at the thought of her brother, safely hidden away from their father's scrutiny. Years of careful planning, of ensuring he stayed beneath the emperor's notice, have finally borne fruit. I may be a pawn, but at least my brother remains free of his manipulations. Her thoughts drifted to her mother, a gentle and carefree soul who had once brought warmth to the cold walls of the palace. My mother loved us both dearly. She was the one light in a world filled with shadows, the one who made the weight of this life bearable. Meixiu's steps slowed as she glanced out a nearby window, the gardens below illuminated by moonlight. A pang of sadness gripped her chest. Her laughter still echoes in my mind. She would sing to us, tell us stories of a simpler life beyond these palace walls. I tried to protect her, too. But she closed her eyes for a moment, pushing back the flood of emotions. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. But I failed.
Beneath the moonlit silken veil, her voice would calm the fiercest gale. Her touch a whisper soft and kind, a fleeting trace yet deeply entwined. Oh, mother dear, where do you lie? In stars above or gloaming sky, your love remains a boundless sea, a gentle flame that shelters me. Her laughter rang like silver streams, a lullaby must I lift my gaze and find her light in dawn's embrace. Find over, dear, where do you lie? In stars above or blooming sky, your love remains a boundless sea, a gentle flame that shelters me. Forever you'll shine, no need to say goodbye. My heart's eternal blue in the sky.
Before she could delve further into the painful memory of her mother's death, a faint sound reached her ears, a muffled rustling, accompanied by hurried whispers. Her eyes snapped open, her body instinctively stilling. The corridor was empty, but the faint disturbance came from a small garden courtyard nearby, the one reserved for court officials and their secret discussions. Her gaze narrowed as she tilted her head toward the sound. What is this? A midnight meeting? Without hesitation, she adjusted her robes for silent movement and turned toward the source of the noise. Each step was deliberate, her senses heightened as she approached the garden's edge. The whispering grew clearer, though the words were still indistinct. Meixiu's heart quickened, her sharp mind already racing through the possibilities. If there is conspiracy afoot, I must know. She reached the edge of the garden, her slender fingers brushing against the cool stone as she peered into the shadows. Two figures stood beneath a gnarled cherry blossom tree, their backs partially illuminated by the moonlight. They were clad in the robes of palace servants, though their furtive glances and cautious gestures betrayed them as anything but ordinary. Meixiu stilled herself, every muscle in her body taut with anticipation as she strained to catch the whispered conversation. The voices were hushed, careful, and laced with urgency. The time is approaching, the first voice, low and gravelly, murmured. He won't wait much longer. If we delay, we'll lose everything. A softer, more hesitant voice replied, but to act now is madness. The Emperor's eyes are everywhere. One misstep, and it's our heads on the block. The gravelly voice scoffed. Cowardice won't save us. The Emperor's paranoia grows worse every day. If we don't act soon, he'll tighten his grip further, and then none of us will be safe. Meixiu's heart quickened. A conspiracy? Here, in the Emperor's own palace? She leaned closer, careful not to disturb the foliage that partially concealed her. The hesitant voice spoke again, trembling now. But what of the banquet? Won't it complicate everything? Too many eyes, too much attention. Exactly why it's the perfect distraction, the gravelly voice interrupted. The Emperor will be too busy flaunting his power to notice what's happening in the shadows. And as for the banquet arrangements, leave them to me. Meixiu's brow furrowed. So, this involves the banquet? Could this be why Father insisted I oversee the preparations? Did he suspect something, or is this merely a coincidence? The hesitant voice dropped even lower, almost inaudible. And, the princess? She's been tasked with the arrangements. If she notices anything. The gravelly voice cut in sharply. The princess? She's nothing more than a pawn, just like the rest of them. As long as we keep her occupied with trivialities, she won't have time to meddle. Meixiu's lips pressed into a thin line, her anger simmering beneath her calm exterior. Underestimate me, will you? But if she does meddle, the hesitant voice persisted. There was a pause, and then the gravelly voice responded coldly, then we'll handle her like the others. She's favored now, but even the Emperor can be turned against her with the right whispers. A chill ran down Meixiu's spine, though her expression remained stoic. So, they're bold enough to plan treachery against me as well. Let's see who ends up outmaneuvered. The conversation shifted, the voices becoming harder to decipher as the figures began to move deeper into the garden. Meixiu watched them disappear into the shadows, their words lingering in her mind like echoes of a storm. Straightening, she stepped back into the corridor, her mind racing. I cannot confront them now, not without evidence. But if they think they can use this banquet to cover their schemes, they've underestimated me. Her gaze hardened as she turned and began walking back toward her chambers. This banquet will not only be a stage for Father's power but also for uncovering the truth. And if they think I'm merely a pawn, I'll ensure they learn just how wrong they are.